Okay guys, yesterday was a busy day. We got the first 2 coats put on. Now it's time to get the 3rd coat done. And again, we're going to do the same thing preparation-wise that we did after the 1st coat to get ready for the 2nd coat. Again, we are not going to sand. I want this coat to bond. I want it to get into all those little nooks and crannies and imperfections in there. So again, we're just going to take our 6-inch knife and we're just going to knock off all the areas where there's little crumbs. So we just want to prep it that way and just scrape off what we're getting ready to finish. Okay, for the final and 3rd coat, we're just going to use the blue bucket or the lightweight joint compound. And I want to show you, if we look at that, it's real crumbly looking, or it's got a lot of air pockets in it. We do not want to use this way. The product is still a little thick, and I want to add water. You have to be careful. You don't want to add too much. So when you just take the bucket off, start whipping it up to get some of those, start making it smooth, and then just add a little water at a time. We don't want to make this product runny at all. Do not use a cordless drill. Make sure you have a powered drill because this stuff is really thick and it will burn up your cordless drill. Okay, we got this nice and whipped up. Looks fairly smooth, but I can still see that it's a little gritty, I guess. So I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little water. Just gonna cover the top of it with the water and then mix it up again. Be very careful, this will splash everywhere. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's got a nice consistency to it. We're just gonna go ahead, but it's not falling off of my finger. So we're gonna go with that. Okay, got a full pan, got my 10-inch knife here. Now a couple things. It's very important that you always stay clean when doing this. But I want you to look at your knife. See if you can see that. It bows one way or the other. With the tips down, with the bow in this shape, this is the side I want to put my mud on. What we're going to do is we'll just start here at the butt joint. I'm going to take this mud and I'm going to shred it no wider than what my current mud pattern is. And then I'm just going to drag that down, but I'm going to just keep dragging it, not adding a lot of pressure, not trying to scrape it all off, but I just want to make sure there's mud on that joint. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. Now, we don't want just to hump in this area, we want to make it as flat as possible. So I'm going to take mud here and I'm going to put it on the edge where my mud line stopped. And then I want to drag that down. Remember I talked about the pressure. I'm using my 2 fingers on this knife again. And when I'm dragging this side, I always want to force the mud to the center of this joint. See, this edge is feathered, but my ridge line's right here. So then I'm going to go and I'm going to put mud on this side. And I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to put the pressure on this finger to force the mud to the middle of that joint. So my edge is nice and feathered here, but I have this, my lines all in the center. And then I'm going to take my knife, light pressure, and just run it right down the center. That's going to prevent sanding. Okay, anytime we have an inside corner, it's just a little bit different, and it's what slows the process down because we're only coating one side of the joint on at a time. I've already coated this side and it's nice and dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and coat this side. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna stick the mud and I'm gonna drag it out. You don't want to drag it out any wider than my knife. And you'll have to get used to that, but I'm just gonna drag it out. And then I'm going to use the pressure of this finger and I want to force the mud into that corner to feather this edge. Now because I already coated this joint here, you'll notice when I drug through I got a line here. You can just drag your knife down to kind of kill it a little bit, but make sure you're not grooving into your old mud. Now I just want to take mud and I'm going to put it right on top of that. I'm going to drag it down to this one. And I'm just going to keep dragging until all my edges are feathered and it's perfectly smooth. Okay, that's a non-feathered edge. What we want to do is scrape it down. You can see there's still an edge there. I'm going to drag it again and see now there's no edge. Okay, outside corners are the same way as everything else. See how it kind of leaves little crumbs down that we want to scrape off. I'll take this, make it nice and smooth. All right guys, that was the third coat. We put some fans on it. It took a few hours to dry, but we're ready to complete the room. But in this particular application, the homeowner wants this room to match the rest of the house. So we're gonna texture the ceilings. So that means we're still not ready to sand the walls. I show you sanding on the walls and you'll know what we need to do to prep the ceiling. But for the sanding process, we need to shut off the lights. I'm gonna use my flashlight on my phone here to show you sanding. So let's get up here next to the wall. And I'm gonna take my light and I'm gonna shine it right down the wall. Do you see all those little crumbs and things? Even though we put it on smooth, we still have all these little ridges right here. And we have these little crumbs right here. That's all we wanna sand. There's not a lot to it. We already feathered the edges. We'll run them with a piece of sandpaper, but we want to knock all those ridges off. Okay guys, for sanding, I bought me an angled sanding block, 120 grit. That's going to be perfect when we get up to the ceiling. You take any light, if you have a work light, and just position it to shine the light as close to the wall or down the wall as possible, just to make all these little ridges stand up. I'm going to shine it down and I'm going to see these little ridges in here, and I'm just going to hit them, just going to knock them off. I'm just going to feather it right around the edge of all my nail holes, all my little, all my seam spots. Just going to knock it to where it just starts disappearing. That's going to be the best way to do this to keep the dust down. Remember, you want to close your door, tape your doors off, put something underneath the door. Vents that come into the room, close all them off because this dust is a disaster. I mean, we want to keep it as contained as possible. Anytime there's a chunk, if there's something you can just knock off with your knife, go ahead and do that. But we don't want to get real vigorous with the sandpaper because it'll throw dust all over. So if we can just run it on those edges, knocking off what we see with our light, the dust will fall straight to the ground. Should be able to take a vacuum and just vacuum it up. Okay, you get the gist of what we were doing with the sandpaper. That's what I'm going to do on the ceiling. But I didn't want to get my walls because I'm going to be spraying texture. I'm going to get some on the walls and I don't want to have to sand the wall twice. So I'm just going to be careful when I texture the ceiling and get it. I want to get it up into this corner, but I don't want to get too much on the walls, and I'll show you how to remove that. Now to spray, I'm going to spray a knockdown texture is what it's called. And you spray it up on the ceiling, let it dry a little bit, then take a knife and knock it off. So that's what we're going to do here to match the rest of the house. When I do my texture, I use the same material that I used for the third coat. It's so easy to sand, so easy to work with, it's lightweight, and it works. We get a great outcome with it. Plus, any that we get on the wall, it will sand just the same way as the material that we already have on the wall. So I just use it, I just mix it a lot runnier. The runnier you mix the texture, the larger splatter pattern that you're gonna get. If you mix it real dry, and then when the air travels through and blows the texture on the ceiling, it's gonna blow it in little flakes because it's too dry to run through that. So the wetter it is, the larger the pattern is going to be. Just a small texture powered rig, blows air, and has the material all in one. You might notice that some guys use hoppers connected to a air compressor, but I'll use this. I believe this is the one that you can rent. It's real easy to use. It just sits right on your arm, holds the material, blows the air. This is as close to pancake batter as I can get it. It's nice and runny. dripping off of my finger. Now I'm gonna take it and go straight to the texture gun. Make sure you get plenty in the corners and out on the edge. Alright guys, yesterday was probably the messiest day of the entire process, and that was texturing the ceilings. But we got them done. There's a few things you've seen me do that I didn't talk about that I want to talk to you about. And the main thing is this knife. I think regular price they're about $10. But it's very important when you're doing the knockdown process. You've seen me dragging it along the ceiling. What I did was I sprayed it up there and I waited about 10 minutes till the edges of that splatter started to dry. And then I took this and I just flattened out the tops of it using even pressure. I always started in the corners and drug my way out, if you notice that. But you also see me use it as a wall scraper. And that's after I knocked the ceiling down. What I did was I made sure this was flat against the wall, and your mud has to be completely dry from your third coat before you do it. But I just took this and I scraped all those little overspray off, and I left it at the top. And let me zoom in. You see these little crumbs here at the top. I left those on there and let them completely dry. You got them all over. You'll see what I'll do is I'm going to take my 6-inch knife and I'm just going to take them now that they're completely dry, and I'm just going to bust them off. Go ahead and run and they'll just fall right off. I don't want to gouge into the material, the texture. I just want to knock those off. I want to knock those off all the way around the room in any spots, and if there's a little chunk I can go ahead and scrape it off. But now it's time for the worst part of the entire process, and that's sanding the walls. So you can see everything that I'm looking at, all these little crumbs, that's from the texture. See the edges. Now I'm going to sand that. Here's the after. Okay guys, took the mask off for this. When we're sanding, again, we're using this angled sanding block. And when you get to the ceiling or your inside corners, I want you to put this beveled edge up into the corner. So we're gonna take it and put it up in there, and then that's how we're gonna sand. What that's gonna do is that's keeping this flat part from sticking out and leaving a groove out here. It's keeping it at the corner. But what it's also doing is this corner is sanding off the texture that we have right here just in the corner. What that's going to do is that's going to allow you, when you go to paint this layer, that's going to give you a nice groove line right at the wall for your brush to roll right along, so you keep a nice straight line between the ceiling and the wall. I was just taking this broom and just dragging the dust down the wall. I don't want to fling it or put any kind of pressure on it. I'm just trying to keep the dust contained down at the bottom of the wall, because it gets in everything. And again, it's so important that you tape off your vents, tape off your door, put something at the bottom of the door. And then when you're done sanding, clean yourself off in this room. If you got a vacuum in here, just go ahead and vacuum yourself off, because you don't want to carry that dust into the rest of the house. It's so fine and it gets into everything. Now we need to prime. And this is up for debate, but we're doing it Doug's way again, so let's just do it this way. We want to use a new sheetrock primer. We have this area where we sanded, and we have where we didn't put any mud on the wall. You'll notice little furs sticking up. I guess that's a good term to use, but this is nice, different, smooth. So we have two different textures. What we want to use is a PVA primer. We want to put it on here, and then we'll take it and lightly sand the PVA primer when it's done to try to accomplish the same texture The only time you'll really notice it is if you use a high gloss paint in this room. You'll see each one of these spots because it's different textures. So we want to seal it off. I'm not a fan of the paint and primer in one. This is new sheetrock. Let's plan on using a PVA primer. Anyway, how to paint's a whole different video, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We'll see you guys next time.